The arrival. On the distant planet of Zephyra, vibrant colors filled the sky as the twin suns began to set. The air buzzed with excitement, for today was a special day. Princess Lyra stood on the balcony of the royal palace, gazing at the horizon. She wore a gown made of shimmering fabric that reflected the light in beautiful patterns. But her heart was heavy with worry. Reports of strange ships had reached her ears, and she feared for the safety of her people. Suddenly, a loud roar broke the peaceful atmosphere. Lyra turned her head quickly, her eyes widening in surprise. A ship, unlike any she had ever seen, was descending from the sky. It was sleek and metallic, glowing in the light of the suns. The guards around her quickly drew their weapons, ready for a fight. Lyra felt a mix of fear and curiosity. What did this ship mean? Was it a threat, or could it be something else? As the ship landed with a thud, dust clouds rose around it. Lyra watched intently, her heart racing. The doors of the ship opened slowly, and a figure stepped out. It was a human soldier, dressed in a dark uniform, with a helmet that covered most of his face. He looked around, taking in his surroundings with a determined expression. Lyra felt a strange pull towards him. She had heard stories about humans, tales of bravery and strength, but she had never seen one up close. The soldier's stance was confident, and he moved with purpose. Lyra's curiosity overcame her fear. She stepped forward, signaling her guards to lower their weapons. "Wait," Lyra commanded, her voice steady despite the chaos in her heart. The guards hesitated but obeyed her. The soldier noticed her, his eyes widening behind his visor. He took a cautious step forward, and Lyra felt a spark of connection, as if they shared a secret only they could understand. "Who are you?" Lyra asked, her voice echoing in the stillness. The soldier removed his helmet, revealing a rugged face with striking blue eyes. "I'm Jack," he replied, his voice deep and clear. "I'm here to warn you." "Warn me?" Lyra's brow furrowed. "About what?" Jack looked serious. "There's an invasion coming. A hostile race is planning to attack your planet. I came to help you prepare." Lyra's heart raced at his words. An invasion? She turned to her guards, who exchanged worried glances. "Can we trust him?" one of them whispered. Lyra felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. She had to make a decision that could change everything. "Trust is built on understanding," Lyra said firmly. "I will listen to what he has to say." The guards reluctantly lowered their weapons, still tense but willing to follow their princess. Jack seemed relieved. "Thank you. I know this is hard to believe, but I've seen their ships. They are dangerous. We need to act quickly." Lyra nodded, her mind racing. "Then let us speak inside the palace. We will discuss this further." She gestured for him to follow her, leading Jack through the grand entrance of the palace. The walls were adorned with colorful tapestries that told the history of Zephyra. As they walked, Jack looked around, taking in the beauty of the palace. "Your home is amazing," he said, genuine admiration in his voice. "Thank you," Lyra replied, feeling a sense of pride. "But right now, our safety is what matters most. We need to gather the council and prepare for what is to come." Once inside the council chamber, Lyra summoned the members. The room was large, with a round table at its center. The councilors arrived, looking puzzled and anxious. They whispered among themselves, casting curious glances at Jack. Lyra took a deep breath and addressed them. "Councilors, this is Jack, a soldier from Earth. He has come to warn us of an impending invasion. We must hear him out." The councilors exchanged skeptical looks, but Lyra stood firm. "We cannot ignore this warning. The safety of our people is at stake." Jack stepped forward, his voice steady. "I've seen the enemy's forces. They are powerful and ruthless. We need to unite and prepare for battle. I can help you understand their tactics." The councilors murmured amongst themselves, doubt still hanging in the air. Lyra could sense their fear, but she also felt a growing determination. She believed Jack's words, and knew they had to act swiftly. "Let us listen to him," Lyra urged, her eyes shining with conviction. "We are stronger together." The council fell silent, the weight of the moment pressing on them. Jack's presence, though unexpected, had sparked a glimmer of hope. Little did they know, this encounter would mark the beginning of an extraordinary alliance that could change the fate of Zafira forever. The unexpected conflict. The council chamber was filled with tension as the members exchanged glances. Lyra stood at the head of the table, her heart racing. Jack, the human soldier, stood beside her, looking serious. She could sense the doubt among the counselors. Some were eager to hear what he had to say, while others were still unsure about trusting a stranger from another world. "Let's hear what Jack has to offer," Lyra said, trying to sound confident. "We have no time to waste." Jack cleared his throat. "Thank you, Princess. I understand your concerns. My people have faced many threats, and I've learned that preparation is key to survival. The enemy you face is ruthless. They don't fight for honor. They fight to conquer." One of the counselors, a wise elder named Kiran, spoke up. "How do we know this is not a trap? You come here uninvited, and now we must put our lives in your hands." Jack met Kiran's gaze, unflinching. "I came here to help. My only goal is to warn you and prevent loss of life. I wouldn't have risked my own if I didn't believe this was real." Lyra stepped in, sensing the rising conflict. "Kiran, I understand your worries. But look at what we've learned. Our scouts have seen enemy ships on the horizon. Jack has faced these threats before. He can help us prepare." The counselors murmured among themselves. Doubt still lingered, but Lyra felt a shift in the atmosphere. Jack's resolve was convincing. He had something they needed, a fresh perspective, strategies honed by experience. "What do you suggest we do?" Another counselor, Lyra's close advisor named Mara, asked, leaning forward with curiosity. Jack took a deep breath. "We must gather all your warriors and train them for combat. Your people are brave, but they lack the knowledge of how the enemy fights. I can teach you their strategies." Lyra nodded, feeling hope. "We can begin immediately. We'll have a meeting with the commanders and start training at dawn." Suddenly, the doors burst open, and a guard rushed in, breathless. "Your Highness, there's trouble outside." Lyra's heart sank. "What is it?" "Enemy scouts have been spotted near the outskirts of the city. They're watching us." A wave of panic swept through the council. "We must prepare for battle," Kiran shouted, rising from his seat. The room buzzed with urgency as counselors scrambled to organize a defense. Jack stepped forward, calm amidst the chaos. "We need to remain focused. If they are watching, we must act wisely. Princess, can you send a small group to scout their position? We need to know their numbers." Lyra nodded, appreciating Jack's leadership. "Yes, I will go." "Mara, gather a few trusted soldiers. We need to confirm the threat before acting." Mara looked worried. "But Your Highness, it's dangerous." "I understand the risks, but we can't let fear dictate our actions," Lyra replied firmly. "I will not let our people suffer because of our hesitation." As Lyra prepared to leave with Mara and a few guards, Jack grabbed her arm gently. "Be careful, Princess. I know you are brave, but you must protect yourself. I cannot help you if you get hurt." Lyra felt a warmth spread in her chest at his concern. "I will be cautious, Jack. I promise." With that, Lyra and her small team set off. As they moved through the bustling streets of the city, Lyra felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. The people of Zafira looked to her for guidance, and she would not let them down. They approached the edge of the city, where lush green fields met the rocky terrain. Lyra signaled for her team to stop, her senses heightened. They crept through the tall grass, eyes scanning the area for signs of the enemy. Suddenly, they spotted movement ahead. A group of alien figures was hidden behind a rocky outcrop, their shapes distorted in the fading light. Lyra's heart raced as she signaled her team to stay low. "Count them," she whispered to Mara. 3, maybe 4, Mara replied, her voice barely audible. Lyra took a deep breath. This was a critical moment. If they were spotted, everything could change. She had to decide whether to confront them or retreat and report back to the palace. Before she could speak, one of the aliens turned and pointed directly at them. A loud roar echoed across the field, and Lyra's heart sank. The enemy knew they were there. "Run!" Lyra shouted. She turned and dashed back toward the city, her guards close behind. The sound of footsteps grew louder behind them as the enemy gave chase. As they sprinted, Lyra's thoughts raced. This was not just an invasion. It was a war. They had no choice now but to prepare for battle. But she also felt a new determination rising within her. With Jack's help, they could fight back. She would protect her people, no matter the cost. The training begins. The sun rose over the city of Zafira, casting a golden glow on its majestic towers. Lyra stood at the training grounds, her heart pounding with anticipation. She glanced at the assembled warriors, their faces a mix of fear and determination. Today, they would begin their training under the guidance of Jack, the human soldier who had come from a distant world. As Jack approached, Lyra felt a surge of hope. He was dressed in a simple training uniform, and his eyes were sharp and focused. He raised his hand, silencing the murmurs among the crowd. "Listen up, everyone," he called out. "Today marks the beginning of your journey to becoming a formidable fighting force. I know many of you have never faced true battle before, but together we can change that." Lyra stepped forward. "I believe in each one of you. This training is not just about fighting. It's about protecting our home and our people. We are stronger together." The warriors nodded, some exchanging glances filled with newfound determination. Jack smiled, sensing the energy in the air. "Let's get started. We will begin with basic combat techniques. Follow my lead." He demonstrated a series of moves, showing them how to defend and strike with precision. Lyra watched as the warriors tried to mimic him. Some stumbled, but Jack was patient, correcting their stances and encouraging them. As the training progressed, Lyra could see the warriors improving. They started to move more confidently, their bodies adapting to the techniques Jack taught them. Lyra felt pride swell in her chest. They were no longer just civilians. They were becoming warriors. Jack took a moment to pause, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Now, let's practice sparring. Pair up and remember what you learned. Focus on teamwork and communication." The warriors paired off, laughter and shouts filling the training grounds. Lyra joined in, pairing with Mara, and they began to spar. Mara was quick, and Lyra struggled to keep up at first, but with each move, she felt herself growing stronger and more skilled. "Keep your guard up, princess," Mara teased, dodging a light strike. "I will get better, just wait." Lyra laughed, pushing herself to improve. After a while, Jack called for everyone to stop. "Great job, everyone. Remember, it's not just about strength, it's about strategy. Always think 2 steps ahead." Lyra noticed that many warriors had begun to form bonds, laughing and encouraging one another. They were becoming a team. This unity was essential for their survival. Suddenly, a loud horn echoed from the city walls, breaking the atmosphere of camaraderie. Lyra's heart sank as she turned to see the guards rushing toward the training grounds. "Your Highness, there's news from the scouts," one guard shouted, his face pale. Lyra rushed over, worry clawing at her insides. "What is it?" "The enemy is advancing. They have sent a larger force, and they are approaching the city." Jack stepped forward, his expression serious. "We need to prepare for battle. Everyone, gather your weapons and armor. It's time to put what you've learned into practice." The warriors exchanged glances, fear creeping in, but Lyra felt the fire of determination ignite within her. "We can do this. We've trained hard, and we won't let fear control us. We will defend our home." The warriors rallied together, their spirits lifting at her words. They quickly gathered their gear and formed ranks under Jack's guidance. He moved among them, offering encouragement and advice, instilling confidence in every warrior. As they prepared, Lyra felt a sense of unity among her people. They were no longer just individuals. They were a collective force ready to stand against the enemy. She could see the determination in their eyes, a reflection of her own. The enemy approached, dark shapes looming on the horizon. Lyra stood at the front lines, flanked by Jack and her most trusted warriors. The sound of marching feet grew louder, echoing like thunder in the air. "Stay strong," Jack called out, raising his weapon. "We will fight together. Remember your training." The warriors tightened their grips on their weapons, hearts racing as the enemy drew closer. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest, but she felt ready. This was the moment they had prepared for, the fight for their home. As the enemy reached the city gates, a deafening roar erupted from their ranks. They were fierce and ruthless, but Lyra could see her warriors standing firm, their resolve unwavering. She glanced at Jack, who nodded, ready for the battle ahead. "Let's show them the strength of Zephyra," Lyra shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. The warriors cheered, a fierce cry echoing through the air, their spirits ignited by the determination to protect their home. And with that, the battle began. The battle for Zephyra. The battlefield was a chaotic scene of clashing metal and fierce shouts. Lyra stood at the forefront of her warriors, her heart racing with adrenaline. The enemy's forces surged forward, a dark tide threatening to swallow them whole. But she felt a spark of hope as she looked around at her fellow soldiers, their faces set with determination. "Hold the line," Jack shouted, his voice cutting through the noise. He moved swiftly among the fighters, guiding them with the knowledge he had gained from countless battles on Earth. Lyra gripped her weapon tightly, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. She had trained for this moment, and now it was time to put everything into action. The enemy warriors charged at them, their war cries ringing in the air. With a deep breath, Lyra led her group forward. "Fight for our home. Fight for each other," she yelled, rallying her soldiers. They pushed against the enemy, meeting them with fierce resistance. The first clash was intense. Lyra found herself face to face with an enemy warrior, a towering figure with menacing eyes. She quickly sidestepped, dodging his swing, and struck back with all her might. Her training had prepared her for this moment, and she felt a surge of power as she fought. Around her, chaos reigned. Jack was a whirlwind of energy, taking down enemies left and right, guiding the soldiers with expert precision. Lyra caught glimpses of her fellow warriors, each one fighting valiantly. Mara was holding her own against two opponents, her agility shining through. "Keep pushing. We can do this," Lyra shouted as she struck another enemy, her confidence growing with every successful hit. But the enemy was relentless. They continued to pour in, and Lyra could see that some of her warriors were beginning to falter. Fear threatened to creep in, but she refused to let it take hold. "Remember your training. We are stronger together," she called out, urging them to keep fighting. Just then, a sudden explosion rocked the battlefield, sending shockwaves through the ground. Lyra stumbled, regaining her balance as dust filled the air. She squinted through the haze, trying to assess the situation. "Jack," she called out, searching for him among the chaos. He appeared through the smoke, his face grim. "They're using explosive devices. We need to stay alert." Lyra nodded, her heart racing. "We have to protect the civilians. We can't let them breach the walls." With renewed determination, she rallied her warriors again. "Let's push them back. We will not let them take our home." As they surged forward, the tide of battle shifted. Lyra felt a surge of adrenaline as they began to gain ground. They fought with all their strength, moving in unison, the training they had undergone paying off in every blow they struck. But just as victory seemed within reach, a loud roar echoed from the enemy ranks. A massive creature, much larger than any of them, charged onto the battlefield. It was a war beast, covered in thick armor and roaring in fury. The ground shook with each step it took. "Everyone, fall back," Jack yelled, raising his weapon. "We need to regroup." But Lyra stood her ground, her eyes locked on the beast. It was a terrifying sight, but she felt a fire ignite within her. "We can't let it pass. If it reaches the city, we're done for." Without thinking, she charged forward, her heart pounding in her chest. Jack shouted after her, but she didn't stop. The beast was focused on the main group, and she saw this as her chance. She sprinted toward it, adrenaline pumping through her veins. As she neared the beast, it turned its massive head, glaring down at her with fury. Lyra's breath quickened, but she steadied herself. "I can do this," she whispered to herself. She leaped onto a nearby pile of debris, gaining height. From there, she could see the creature clearly. It was massive, with powerful limbs and teeth bared. But she remembered her training, and she knew she had to act fast. With all her strength, she hurled her weapon at the creature. It struck true, hitting a weak spot in its armor. The beast let out a deafening roar of pain, staggering back. Lyra felt a surge of triumph. "Now, attack," she shouted, rallying her fellow warriors. They surged forward, taking advantage of the beast's moment of vulnerability. Jack led the charge, his sword gleaming in the sunlight. Together, they swarmed the creature, striking with everything they had. Lyra joined in, her heart racing with determination. They fought fiercely, and with a final collective effort, the beast fell with a thundering crash. The battlefield fell silent for a moment as everyone took a breath, shock rippling through the ranks. Lyra looked around, her fellow warriors breathing heavily, but their eyes filled with awe and newfound strength. "We did it," Lyra shouted, unable to contain her excitement. "We can fight together." Cheers erupted among her warriors, their spirits soaring. But Lyra knew that this was only the beginning. The battle for Zephyra was far from over, and they would need every ounce of strength and unity to protect their home. As they prepared for the next wave of attackers, Lyra felt a sense of determination wash over her. She had proven to herself and her people that they could stand strong against any enemy. They were warriors, and they would fight for each other until the very end. The unexpected sacrifice. The air crackled with tension as Lyra and her warriors stood on the battlefield, adrenaline coursing through their veins. They had just defeated the war beast, but they knew that this was not the end. The enemy was regrouping, and a new wave of attackers was already gathering in the distance. Lyra could see them assembling, their numbers growing as they prepared for another assault. "Get ready," Jack shouted, his voice booming above the noise. The warriors tightened their grips on their weapons, determination written on their faces. They had fought hard and had gained a significant advantage, but they were still outnumbered. Lyra felt a mix of fear and resolve. She had witnessed the strength of her people, but she knew that the next battle would be even more challenging. "We need to hold the line," she called out to her warriors. "Together, we can do this." As the enemy advanced, Lyra noticed a figure in the distance. It was the alien princess, hidden behind a wall of soldiers. Her eyes were wide with fear, but there was a spark of hope in them. Lyra felt a surge of responsibility wash over her. The princess had come to them seeking help, and now it was her duty to protect her at all costs. "Stay behind me," Lyra yelled, rushing toward the princess. But just as she reached her, a piercing scream echoed across the battlefield. One of Lyra's warriors, Mara, had been struck down by an enemy warrior. "No," Lyra cried out, her heart breaking. Mara had fought bravely, and now she lay on the ground, her life fading away. The sight fueled Lyra's anger, and she turned her focus back to the advancing enemies. "Focus. We need to protect the princess," Jack shouted, rallying the soldiers. Lyra nodded, wiping the tears from her eyes. They had to keep fighting. The enemy surged forward, and Lyra positioned herself in front of the princess, ready to defend her with everything she had. The clash began again, weapons clashing and shouts echoing across the battlefield. Lyra fought with fierce determination, but she could feel the weight of loss in her heart. As the battle raged on, Lyra noticed the enemy's commander in the chaos, a fierce-looking alien with dark armor. He seemed to be orchestrating the attack, pushing his soldiers forward with a ruthless strategy. Lyra felt a surge of anger. If they could take him down, it might turn the tide of the battle. "Jack, we need to take out their commander," she shouted, pointing toward the alien leader. Jack nodded, determination shining in his eyes. "Let's go." They pushed through the crowd, fighting their way toward the commander. But as they closed in, the enemy soldiers began to surround them. The odds were against them, and Lyra felt a sense of desperation rising within her. Suddenly, the commander turned, locking eyes with Lyra. He raised his weapon, preparing to fire. Lyra's heart raced. She had to act fast. "Jack!" Lyra yelled, but it was too late. The commander fired a blast, and Lyra saw Jack move to protect her. He stepped in front of her just in time. The blast struck him squarely in the chest, sending him sprawling to the ground. "Jack!" Lyra screamed, rushing to his side. Her heart sank as she saw him lying there, gasping for breath. "I'm okay," Jack managed to say, pain etched on his face. "But you have to stop him, Lyra. You can't let him win." Lyra's eyes burned with tears as she looked back at the commander, who was now advancing toward them with a smug smile. "You're too late, human," he taunted, his voice dripping with arrogance. Lyra felt a surge of rage. Jack had sacrificed himself for her, and she couldn't let it be in vain. "No," she shouted, rising to her feet despite the chaos surrounding her. "I won't let you win." With newfound determination, Lyra charged toward the commander, her weapon raised. She could hear Jack's voice in her mind, urging her on. As she approached, the commander swung his weapon, but Lyra ducked and rolled, avoiding the strike. The battle around her faded into the background as she focused solely on the commander. She could feel the strength of her fallen comrades fueling her as she launched herself at him. With a swift motion, she brought her weapon down, striking him in the side. He let out a roar of pain and anger, staggering back. Lyra pressed on, refusing to back down. She knew this was her moment to protect not just herself and the princess, but everyone who had fought alongside her. "Stay away from my people," she shouted, her voice echoing through the battlefield. With each blow she struck, she felt the weight of her responsibility pushing her forward. Finally, with one last strike, she plunged her weapon deep into the commander's chest. He gasped, shock in his eyes, and then fell to the ground, defeated. The battlefield fell silent for a brief moment, and Lyra stood there, breathing heavily, her heart racing. She had done it. They had a chance to win now. As the enemy soldiers hesitated, their commander gone, Lyra turned back to Jack. He was still on the ground, but his eyes were filled with pride. "You did it," he whispered, a faint smile on his face. Lyra knelt beside him, tears streaming down her face. "You saved me, Jack. I couldn't have done this without you." But Jack shook his head, his strength fading. "We need to finish this. The princess. Protect her." Lyra nodded, determination filling her heart. "I promise." She stood up, ready to continue the fight for her home, for her people, and for Jack's sacrifice. The battle was not over yet, but now they had a fighting chance. The turning point. The battlefield was alive with chaos. With the enemy commander defeated, Lyra felt a shift in the air. The soldiers around her were no longer fighting with fear. Instead, there was a glimmer of hope. They rallied together, drawing strength from the loss of their leader, while the alien soldiers hesitated, unsure of their next move. Lyra's heart raced as she scanned the area. Jack was still on the ground, struggling to stay conscious. "Stay with me, Jack," she shouted, her voice breaking. She could not afford to lose him now, not after everything they had fought for together. "Lyra," Jack managed to say, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "You have to keep fighting." "The princess," She needs you." His voice was weak but resolute, igniting a fire in Lyra's heart. She turned to the alien princess, who had been watching the battle unfold in shock. The princess's wide eyes reflected both fear and admiration. Lyra had fought fiercely to protect her, and now it was time to turn that protection into action. "Your Highness," Lyra called, "we need you to lead your people. They will follow you if you show them strength." The princess took a deep breath, stepping forward. "You're right," she replied, her voice trembling but strong. "I must show them that we can rise above this." With renewed determination, the princess lifted her weapon high above her head. "Warriors of Morelia, follow me," she shouted, her voice echoing across the battlefield. Lyra watched as the Myralian soldiers responded to their princess's call. The fear that had gripped them moments before faded as they rallied around her. They were inspired by Lyra's bravery and the princess's strength. Together, they formed a united front. Meanwhile, Lyra rushed back to Jack, who was struggling to sit up. "You need medical attention," she insisted, her heart aching at the sight of her friend in pain. "No," Jack said firmly, grabbing her hand. "We need to finish this. I'll be okay. Just help me up." With a nod, Lyra helped him to his feet, using all her strength to support him. They staggered back into the fray, determined to push the enemy back once and for all. Lyra could feel the tides of battle shifting. The alien soldiers, seeing their commander defeated and the princess rallying her people, began to falter. They hesitated, unsure of their next move. "Push forward," Lyra shouted to her fellow warriors. "We can win this." The Myralian soldiers surged ahead, their weapons raised high, filled with a renewed sense of purpose. As the fighting intensified, Lyra fought alongside the princess and Jack. They were a powerful trio, moving as one. Lyra's heart swelled with pride as she saw her people fighting with newfound strength. But the enemy was not done yet. In a last desperate attempt, they charged forward, attempting to break the Myralian line. Lyra could see their determination, fueled by the fear of losing their home. "Stand firm," the princess shouted, leading her soldiers to hold their ground. Lyra felt a rush of energy as she fought alongside them, defending their territory with everything she had. But just when it seemed like victory was in sight, a new figure emerged from the chaos. An elite warrior, clad in dark armor, who had been hidden among the enemy ranks. He moved with deadly precision, cutting through the Myralian soldiers with ease. Lyra felt a chill run down her spine as she recognized the warrior's intent. He was targeting the princess. "No," she shouted, rushing forward to intercept the blow. But she was too far away. "Lyra, watch out," Jack yelled, but it was too late. The elite warrior lunged at the princess, his weapon glinting menacingly in the dim light. In a moment of instinct, Lyra leaped forward, putting herself in the path of the attack. The enemy warrior's blade struck her side, a sharp pain shooting through her body. "No," Jack cried out, reaching for her. Lyra stumbled, falling to her knees as the world around her began to fade. The princess gasped, horrified. "Lyra, why did you do that?" she screamed, rushing to Lyra's side. Lyra managed a weak smile, her vision blurring. "Because you are worth fighting for," she whispered, her strength fading. She could feel the warmth of her blood pooling around her, but there was also a sense of peace. The princess looked down at Lyra, tears in her eyes. "You can't leave us. You have to stay." But Lyra shook her head slowly. "You are strong. You can lead them. Don't give up." With her last ounce of strength, she raised her hand, touching the princess's cheek. "Fight for us." And with that, Lyra's eyes fluttered closed. The princess, filled with rage and determination, stood tall. "We will fight for you, Lyra. We will not let your sacrifice be in vain." Jack, still on the ground, felt a surge of anger at the loss of his friend. He gritted his teeth, refusing to let her memory fade away. "We fight for Lyra," he shouted, pushing through the pain to join the princess in the battle. With the weight of Lyra's sacrifice heavy in their hearts, the Myralian warriors and Jack pressed forward, fighting with a fierce resolve. The tide of the battle had turned, and they were determined to honor their fallen friend. The enemy could sense the change, their fear growing as they realized they were now up against a united force, one fueled by loss, courage, and the promise of a brighter future. Lyra's spirit would live on through their fight, and they would not stop until they claimed victory. New dawn. The battlefield lay in ruins, littered with the remnants of the fierce fight that had raged on. The air was thick with smoke, the cries of the wounded mingling with the fading sounds of battle. But among the chaos, something remarkable was happening. The Myralian soldiers stood together, united by the sacrifice of their brave warrior, Lyra. The alien princess, now a symbol of hope and strength, stood at the forefront, her eyes blazing with determination. "We will not forget Lyra," she proclaimed, raising her weapon high. "We will honor her memory by standing together, fighting for peace." The remaining enemy soldiers, realizing the tide had turned against them, began to retreat. They had underestimated the spirit of the Myralian people, and now they were paying the price. The alien princess's call echoed through the battlefield, filling her warriors with a sense of pride and purpose. Jack, still nursing his wounds, looked at the princess with admiration. "You did it," he whispered, a hint of awe in his voice. "You brought them together." The princess nodded, her heart heavy, but filled with resolve. "It was Lyra who showed us the way. We must continue to fight for her dream of a united future." She turned to the soldiers, her voice steady. "We must ensure that no one else suffers as we have." As the last of the enemy forces fled, the Myralian warriors cheered. Their spirits soared as they realized they had won, not just the battle but their freedom. Yet, the joy was bittersweet. The loss of Lyra weighed heavily on their hearts. Days turned into weeks, and the Myralian people began to rebuild. They honored Lyra's memory by creating a memorial in the center of their city, a statue depicting her in a fierce battle stance, symbolizing her courage and sacrifice. The princess visited the memorial daily, reflecting on Lyra's bravery and the bond they had formed. She knew that the fight was not just for survival, it was for a future where all beings could live together in peace. Jack remained by the princess's side, sharing stories of Lyra's bravery with the people. "She fought for what was right," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "She believed in the strength of our alliance." The princess nodded, understanding the importance of their shared memories. Lyra's spirit had forged a bond between their worlds that would not be easily broken. As the Myralian society began to heal, they turned their eyes toward the stars. The alien princess and Jack worked together, forming new alliances with neighboring planets. They shared knowledge and technology, focusing on building a peaceful galaxy. Lyra's sacrifice had sparked a movement, one that encouraged unity among the races. One day, while gazing at the night sky, the princess felt a warm breeze brush against her face. She closed her eyes, imagining Lyra standing beside her. "Thank you for your courage," she whispered to the stars. "We will carry your legacy forward." Jack, standing nearby, sensed her emotions. "She's watching over us," he said gently. "Her spirit lives on in everything we do." As they looked up at the vast universe, the princess felt hope blooming within her. The galaxy was a big place, full of challenges and unknowns, but she knew they would face them together. With Jack by her side, and the memory of Lyra guiding them, they were ready to forge a new path. Months later, as peace settled over Myralia, the princess stood before her people. "We have come far since that day," she began, her voice strong and clear. "Let us remember our past, honor those we have lost, and embrace the future with open hearts. Together, we are unstoppable." Cheers erupted from the crowd, echoing through the valley. The alliance was strong, built on trust and shared sacrifice. They would not let fear dictate their actions anymore. They would be the architects of their destiny. And in that moment, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden light over the gathering. The dawn of a new era had begun. As the alien princess looked around at her people, at Jack, who stood steadfastly beside her, she knew they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They would fight for peace, for understanding, and for Lyra's legacy. Together, they would create a brighter future for all, proving that even in the darkest times, hope could prevail. With a smile, the princess raised her sword high, a symbol of their unity. For Lyra, for our future. The crowd roared in agreement, their voices rising like a wave. They were no longer just soldiers. They were a family, bound together by their shared experiences and ready to embrace whatever awaited them in the vast expanse of the universe.